All right, I'm here with Chris Lehman. He's going to tell me a little bit about what he does. So, first question, first of all, is can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, right now I'm a freelancing sports broadcaster, so I have a couple of different jobs. But everything I'm doing right now really is either play-by-play or color commentary for sporting events. The main job I have is with Garner High School, doing football, and when basketball season starts, I'll do basketball. And I also do some fill-in work for GoPack.com on on ESPN3 on the ACC Digital Network Extra. They've got more games now, so I've been working with them doing play-by-play and color commentary for them.
So, is this what you saw yourself doing right out of college?
I knew it would be something similar to this. I was hoping through the summer that I would be able to find a full-time job, but I know coming in that this industry, a lot of times you have to piece your jobs together in order to be able to make enough money. So I was hoping to find a job that I would be able to just have one job, and that's the preference, but I knew there was, in all likelihood, I was going to have to kind of put together a couple of different jobs.
So, how did you get your job right out of college?
A lot of it has been networking for me. The guy who's the director of broadcasting for the baseball league that I've worked for the past 2 summers used to broadcast for Garner, and they had an opening and needed someone, and he'd heard me and liked me and brought me in. And it was similar with GoPack.com at NC State. The broadcaster actually for the Durham Bulls knows me and has kind of been a mentor for me. And they needed someone to come in and fill in for a soccer game, and he suggested me, and since then I've been doing work for them.
So, would you say that's why you decided to work for this company? Is because you kind of had connections?
Yeah, and I mean, really, at this point, it's if you have a job, that's what it's all about. But in terms of just the job and what I want to do, I've always loved sports, and so something that'll keep me around sports is what I wanted to do.
So, what do you find most enjoyable about your job?
But yeah, like I said, I like being around sports.
Mm-hmm.
I started playing sports when I was 2-3 years old. Played all the way up through high school. Played intramural sports in college. Always liked the competition, liked being around it. And so I decided in high school, if I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, I wanted to do something that would keep me around sports. And so that's why I've kind of chosen this industry.
Are there any parts that you don't like about your job?
The job search can be tough sometimes, and that's just something that you have to get used to. I think in most jobs is reaching out, talking to people who may not necessarily have an opportunity, but meeting people. So there's a lot of hard work that goes into it outside of just the broadcasting, and that's a ton of fun. And what I've really come to realize from working in the industry for 4 or 5 years now is the work that you don't like makes it worth it because you get to do the really fun stuff.
What do you find most challenging about your job?
One of the most challenging parts right now is the researching, especially with high school athletics, because if you're with a pro team or even with the Division I college team, the stats are right there on a website. You can go; it's easy to find stuff, and a lot of times, that stuff's given to you. You don't even have to go look for it. But in high school, the research can be really tough because even finding an accurate roster sometimes is hard. So that part can be really hard too.
How many hours do you work a typical week?
In a typical week, I usually work probably close to 50 hours,
Wow.
I would say. And right now, that's not all on just one job. Because like I said, I do a couple of different jobs. And part of my job at this point is working for myself, finding another job. Mm-hmm. So I'm up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of times I'll work past 5 o'clock. And then, of course, in this industry, you know going in that you're going to work some odd hours. You'll work on holidays, on weekends, and at nights. So I understand it, but yeah, that's a pretty long week sometimes.
Yeah. What skills are required for your job on a daily basis?
Good research skills, definitely, because you have to be able to find the information, because it's not just about telling people what's going on. You have to give some background and tell a story. So good researching skills, you have to be outgoing, too.
Yeah.
Definitely have to be outgoing, because you're going to reach out to coaches, reach out to players, general managers, things like that. And so you can't be too shy, you can't be hesitant, and you have to understand that they're just people, too. So those are two, I think, qualities that are really important. Oratory skills, obviously. Being able to speak is going to be very important, because if people can't understand you, it's going to be tough to do your job. Yeah.
Can you describe a typical workday for you?
Like I said, I'm up usually by 8:30 and start working by around 9, I have kind of my own office set up in my room, and so I'll get up. A lot of times the first thing I'm doing, especially at the beginning of a week, is getting ready for the football game that I have right now coming up. So I'll get up, I'll contact opposing coaches if we're going on the road. If it's not a home game, I'll contact athletic directors to make sure I have a place to set up and broadcast. Mm-hmm. And I'll start piecing together those sorts of things. And also, we've got to talk to sponsors, because sponsors contribute things each week as well. So that's where I start. Then I kind of lay out a list a lot of times, especially right now, of jobs and what's open. And I start going down that list and putting together applications, sending applications out, and just kind of go from there.
So has it been a long process to get where you are right now with your job search? Or
Yes, and that's one of the things that has kind of been surprising to me, because I've been fortunate to have, like I said, kind of with the networking I've had some jobs just kind of fall into place for me. So it's definitely been a long process. After I graduated, I went and worked for a baseball team for the summer. While I was doing that, and some of my off time, I'm looking for jobs, and I kind of thought, it's been pretty easy. I've been pretty fortunate to find jobs fairly quickly, and so I was a little bit surprised that it's been taking so long, but it's something that I've started to get used to.
What's the toughest obstacle you've had to overcome so far?
Self-doubt. I think there have been a lot of times where, and I hear it a lot, I get a lot of feedback, and I get positive feedback and constructive criticism, but there have certainly been times, especially, when there are a couple of jobs in a row that come back and say, sorry, you're not the right person, and you have to remind yourself that, there are a lot of good broadcasters out there, and just because you didn't get this job doesn't mean there's not another job that's going to come along that you're going to get, and it's probably the toughest thing is not getting down on myself. I certainly have done that a few times, and it can be a real bummer sometimes, but I think it takes some perseverance to get through that, and you just have to understand that it's not personal.
Do you see this industry continuing to grow and be harder and harder to get into?
Oh yeah, and it's been a hard industry to get into just already in general. And you look at a typical job, a typical office job, you can find a lot of those. You'd find hundreds of those jobs all over the place. But when you look at the kind of work that I want to do, there are a lot of minor league teams, there are a lot of networks that you can work for, but there aren't nearly as many of those talent jobs. That's kind of what you call it, talent. When you're talking about broadcasters, jobs where they're looking for talent isn't always as out. I'm not sure the right word. There aren't as many of them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So did your college experience help you get to where you are now?
Yes, it definitely did. And even starting in high school when I worked for the Durham Bulls television crew, and that's where I started to meet people. And you meet people, too, through working with, I know you work for Pac TV now. When I was there, it was Wolfpack Sports, so I might call it that a few times. Yeah. But working for them, I remember going up to Liberty University to cover a hockey game, and I actually was able to use the guy that I met there who worked for them. And I've been talking to him when I found a Liberty job that was open. So there are a lot of doors that you can open through internships and things like that you do at school.
Because I know Drew Blevins, he was talking about how back when he was a freshman, Pac TV only had 7 or so people. He says it's continuing to grow as well.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot bigger.
So even just at school,
yeah.
Because I think we have 23 employees or such. Mm-hmm. So, how important is it to get good grades to attain a job in this field?
Well, good grades are always important because especially in this industry, and don't want to downplay academics because just in general, having a good education and being well-rounded in terms of your education is a good thing because there are some things that you may not expect to use that you may end up having to use, but that's more of, I would almost call it kind of a tiebreaker maybe for employers, and I can't necessarily get into their heads. I haven't been in that situation where I've hired anybody, but if you're pretty comparable with somebody else and their GPA is a few tenths of a points higher, I would expect they're going to go with the person who's got a little bit better GPA because it does say something about you, and what you do in school does say something about you.
So if you could do it all over again coming out of college and everything, would you take the same path that you took?
I guess I would say yes, I would take the same path. There are certainly some things that I would do a little bit differently in terms of job search and things like that because it's all a learning experience. And so you'll learn something and you go, I wish I knew that a month ago when I was applying for this job. But I would definitely, I certainly would take the same path, I think. There were some things I'd do differently, but yeah.
So where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years?
In 5 to 10 years, I certainly would like to be moving up, and that's kind of what it takes. I want to get into hockey is where I specifically want to be. And I am fortunate enough to know people who are working their way up through, so I know kind of the path that a lot of people have to take. So in 5 to 10 years, I'd love to have a job where I don't need multiple jobs, where I don't have to necessarily be a freelancer. I can if I want to. I can do some of that stuff. But in 5 to 10 years, I'd love to be in a minor league organization, have been there for a few years, and kind of be ingrained in a position.
So what advice would you give somebody like myself who's looking to get into this field?
Persevere, and we talked about it. Self-doubt can be tough, not just for this job industry, but for any job industry if you're looking for a job. Just persevere, understand that people are going to say no sometimes, but there will be someone that will say yes, and you'll find a job eventually.
So is there anything else you would like to say?
I don't think so. It's just, don't get down on yourself, I guess would be the best thing. And that's something that I think a lot of people, especially just in general with the job market, which is getting better, but it's still tough to find a job. So don't get down on yourself. Keep looking, keep searching, and work hard, and eventually things work out.
All right, well, appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.